Whilst I made a remarkable amount of money being a very early investor in crypto, I unfortunately missed out on a significant amount of gains because I was too greedy. You're wasting opportunities by not taking profits in every single cycle and being blinded by greed to pursue more and more and more. You've now set on your minds that I'm going to have $10 million or $100 million. The truth is, the market does not give a fuck about your hopes and dreams and desires. The key of this game is to make money, and none of that is real until you press the sell button. If I was to tell you to take a look at your profit and loss right now, what would it show? If I was to go a step further and tell you to take a look at your overall portfolio, what would you see? And furthermore, if I was to tell you to go to the fullest extent and examine every single buy or sell on your platform, crypto trading platform specifically, would it represent a calculated professional trader, or would it represent quite the opposite? Where are all your buys placed? Where are all your sells placed? Are they calculated, precision-like, or a horrendous mess? In fact, how long have you been doing this? What do you have to show for it? Would be the biggest question here. If you have been in the crypto game for several years now and you are not yet profitable, then it's time you wake up. The solution to most of our problems in trading really stems down to a simple, very honest, truthful reflection with ourselves. And understanding that the cause of most of our problems is predominantly down to us. And furthermore, if we do not wake up very quickly and accept the reality of the consequences of our actions, which come from simply buying and selling within the market, specifically crypto, we will never make any progression. Now, most people are scared to do this because they live a lie. And most of us do not want to face the reality and the results of our actions and decisions within the market. So we essentially hide away from it. We shy away from it and we completely ignore it and continue repeating the same self-destructing patterns. But the key to growth and the key to any trader achieving the next level in their career and journey is to man up and face the reality of their actions. Now, when you look at most cryptocurrency traders and when you just examine most people overall, I would say there's almost a particular three-stage cycle procedure. And the reason I'm doing this video is because for any of you that may be in your first cycle, you are likely going to make a lot of mistakes. And if we do see a cycle onwards from here, a secondary cycle, you'll probably make more mistakes. And if we see a third cycle, you'll make even more mistakes. And the truth is, you have to learn from the previous cycles. And that mostly comes down to looking at what you've done so far. Now, if you're new to the crypto game and you're specifically in altcoins, I obviously believe we are on the cusp of an alt season coming very soon. And we're already seeing a taster of that. You've seen the trades I've given, you've seen the calls I've given, and you can kind of get an idea of what I think will happen. And I truthfully believe it will be a lot crazier than what we're already seeing. But the key to this is understanding that cryptocurrencies are an incredibly volatile market that are far more volatile than any other market out there right now. And this also means we theoretically have a very capped window to make money. And it's not what you believe it will be. In fact, if we begin the journey of myself from my very first real cycle, which was the 2017 bull run, I made the mistake of not selling enough because in that particular cycle, I was a complete virgin to the experience of several thousand% happening in the span of several weeks, specifically from Ethereum and XRP. And as I've said in previous videos, whilst I made a remarkable amount of money being a very early investor in crypto, I unfortunately missed out on a significant amount of gains because I was too greedy, because I kept wanting more and more and more and more. And I fell into the traps in the beginning and the cult-like behavior that absorbs each individual cryptocurrency to believe that more was coming and the best was yet to come. And that delusion and that greed consumed me to the point where I couldn't actually perceive the dangers and what I physically had there present in the moment. And this is a very common problem for anyone that is in their first cycle. If you are new to the experiences of seeing your portfolio or seeing your investment surge rapidly to the upside, the speed and severity of that growth can really blind you to how much money you actually have there in your possession in that moment. And the key to understanding this is essentially losing in the first cycle. And this happens to most people in their first cycle. They hold round trip all of their profits. and only realize when the bear market strikes how much money they actually had. And I say this to a lot of members, and I say this to a lot of people from the outside as well that are not a part of innovation markets. But I often get messages during the height of euphoria in crypto bull runs and alt seasons where someone will say, bro, I have, I don't know, 5 million in unrealized profits. Do you think I should sell some? And I go, yes, you fucking plonker. Sell some immediately. Sell some right now, as a matter of fact. And then I would then follow that up with a question of asking that individual how much they make in the real world. And when I say the real world, I mean money does not come free, money does not come cheap. Money comes again with labor or some form of hard work that has to be maintained. And more often than not, the money we make in cryptocurrencies far outweighs the money we make in the real world. And when you have that kind of disparity and diversion between the real world money you earn and the digital make believe money you earn, you can lose touch of reality very quickly and often forget the money you currently have in your portfolio right now, specifically if you are in a profit, is money that would most likely take you many months, if not many years, to acquire through hard work in your regular day job. In fact, in many circumstances, it's money you would probably never see in your life after taxes, utilities, bills, and everyday expenses, if you were to have that right now in your bank account. So it's very important to stay grounded in the markets. And I'm almost doing this video as a pre-warning before things I feel get crazy, because you will suffer from this, and I have suffered from this. And you do not really realize until it's far too late what can go horribly wrong. Now, everyone in your ears will be screaming at you when things go higher. And a good example of that now is XRP, one of the biggest cults in cryptocurrency, and in my opinion, pure delusion. You know, no matter what happens at the end of the day, people forget these are merely investments. No matter what you believe is going to happen with Swift or the Fed or any other nonsense that people constantly have been praising year after year, the markets will always retrace. The markets will always pull back, and there will always be a bear market. In my opinion, cryptocurrencies are still in somewhat of an infancy. I wouldn't say you're in the BTC Genesis days anymore and you can forget about that dream, but we're still early enough to know that the market is purely driven still on speculation. One of the big misinterpretations is ETFs as an example. BlackRock are buying, BlackRock are buying, BlackRock are buying. No, they're not. They're buying on behalf of their clients. They are facilitators. They are not the owners. They are not accumulating in secret. Furthermore, if you watched the previous video on how the market is designed for you to lose, you will know that once the market has essentially made a very large movement to the upside, and then that's paired with positive news, the likelihood is a trap is on the cusp of being deployed. So the problem is with crypto is the narratives. It can almost pollute you at a moment in time where you theoretically have more than enough money for the taking into not taking any whatsoever. And I've made this mistake, and this is what essentially helped me reach the next level in the following cycle. So when we reach the second cycle, we're often crippled from anxiety and fear and almost PTSD of this situation. And what often happens to most people in the second cycle is they actually sell too early. Now, this can be a problem to some, and this is something I face myself a lot with many people when I take profits out of the market. Now, the fact of the matter is, nothing is real until those profits are realized. Something every single person forgets. Now, we're very fortunate in cryptocurrencies that we are provided and have been provided cycle on cycle on cycle with several hundred to several 1,000% return on investment. The key here is the word percentages. Now, I have a very simple rule and a very simple set of rules where I work upon the current boundaries. I get questions a lot that will say, do you think this coin will hit or go past all-time highs? Do you think this coin will go to this level, which is 10,000% beyond all-time highs this cycle? The truth is, I don't know. The truth is, I don't care. And if I did pretend to know, I would be lying to you, because anyone that knows or pretends to know where price will go far beyond all-time highs is quite frankly making it the fuck up and are heavily overinvested themselves. Most of the time, the opinions you hear and the opinions you see and all of the influencer narratives you hear, specifically if it's non-influencer for that matter, if you go on social media, specifically X, and you see a lot of this cult-like behavior coming from coins, it's essentially deriving predominantly from people that now have no choice but to believe the coin will go to that price. because narratives are very dangerous, and it's one of the single contributing factors to what leads people to buying at ridiculous prices, which is something we're going to get to towards the mid to end point of this video, and we'll follow through to that later. But the more you hear people tell you it's going to go further and further and further upwards, it's not necessarily the truth or through analysis, but more so through sheer delusion and conviction due to decisions they've placed within the market. So, as an example, someone that's sidelined will tell you and be more inclined to believe the market will pull back. But someone that has gone above and beyond to put every paycheck into the market, empty their bank accounts, and put their life savings into the market are far more vulnerable to delusional beliefs because it's in their best interest. And quite frankly, they have no other choice but to pray the market goes higher. So by falling for narratives and heavily over investing in the market, you make yourself emotionally susceptible to fall for a lot of lies and deceit within the crypto market as well, which we're no stranger to seeing. At the highest of highs in every single bull run, at the peak of it, the amplified movements, essentially correlated with amplified narratives and theories, will always worsen and almost contribute to you not taking profits off the table. Now, in the second cycle, factoring this in, a lot of people that may be traumatized with that PTSD of not taking enough from the second cycle can often sell far too early in the second cycle. Now, for most people, this is the incorrect thing to do. But the truth is, there is only one goal in this game, and that is to make an investment within the market and make a return on investment to later take that out and win. Now, as you've seen from every cryptocurrency cycle, there are the highest of heights followed by the lowest of lows. Now, in my opinion, I think it is the most stupid thing in the world to hold on to these coins in their current phase with the belief they will continue going up forever. Now, you can look at this as someone from the very early BTC days of holding $100, a BTC at $100 and holding it up to 125,000. The truth is there is no guarantee that you will be able to replicate that return on a new altcoin, even on Ethereum or Solana or anything for that matter. Those days, in my opinion, are quite frankly long gone. And we're in a very different era of cryptocurrencies now. But the truth is they're still heavily prone to speculation and heavy, heavy levels of manipulation. Instead of thinking out of greed and looking at the market as well, if I buy here, in 10 years' time, prices won't matter anyway. You don't know what next month holds. And you know this because of how many shake-ups, FUD and black swans we've seen. You don't know when the top will truly be. And the truth is you don't need to perfectly time the top to be a winner in the market. That's the key to understand here. Now, if you look at every single cycle with the basis that it's providing you several hundred, if not several thousands of percent, keyword depending on where you buy, something I prioritize significantly, you're wasting opportunities by not taking profits in every single cycle and being blinded by greed to pursue more and more and more. And actually, you're more of a winner by taking profits even too early versus someone that holds the entire way, round trips everything, and has nothing to show for the hard work and risk they've taken by placing an entry within the market. If you simply leave with a singular penny in profit after the crypto cycle is done and dusted, and you do not end up at break even or a drawdown, you are a winner. And 99% of people within the cryptocurrency market are losers because they are stuck on conviction and pure faith and belief that things will continue rising forever. But if you look back at every previous cycle, as a matter of fact, you have had an opportunity there to significantly increase your net worth by several hundred to several thousand% every single cycle. And instead of trying to hold on for this one glorious trade that will go on forever, when the truth is the future isn't promised, we do not know what the future holds. And no matter what you've read, what you believe, what partnership you think is going to happen with Swift and a $1.2 trillion market cap, whatever the nonsense is, it's not guaranteed. And that needs to be applied into people's heads. But people will not wake up to that reality because they have already made some fateful decisions where they have invested more than they can physically afford to lose within the market. And as always, if you look at the opposing side, there is an opportunity cost of not being in the market, but there is also an opportunity cost of not exiting the market. And I have a very strict set of rules, which is never sell everything, but never sell nothing. Because until that profit is realized, it's meaningless and it's worthless, and the market can punish you and take that away from you at the click of a finger which in most cases, unfortunately for most people, it does. It unfortunately does. Now, when we look at the idea of selling too early, I would argue that's not a problem. Now, this all comes down to where you buy. And someone like myself, I work off the boundaries of the all time lows to the all time highs. That is essentially my trading playground. That is the boundary I operate within. I take the current all time high and then I take the current all time low. My goal always is to buy as close to those all time lows as possible because I'm not here for make believe, fantasies, or wishful thinking. So the more I buy closer to the all time low, which is perceived a risk to most people, don't forget, most people only feel confident buying an asset when it's actually rising. And this is very important to understand because I've had this every single cycle. And I will often sell from, let's say, the all time low to the all time high. I would sell anywhere from 50 to 80% of the retracement from the low back up to the highs. And I will often sell early in the eyes of most people. But because of how patient I am with my entries, a lot of the time, by the time we've reached 50% of the overall all time high to all time low and retraced 50% of that move, I'm normally up around 1000% at that point. Now, for most people who have bought significantly higher, the game is played very differently for these people. So it can be perceived to them that I've sold too soon. But the truth is, I've actually sold for possibly a 4 to 5 times profit higher than they have at that current price point, if that makes sense. And that's because of where I buy and where I get members into myself. So in the eyes of someone, let's say I've bought XRP in the previous cycle at 29 cents and I've got out just under the $2 threshold. Now, most people could look at that and be like, you sold far too early. And then it goes up to $3.6 at the present stage. But then the truth is, the person that's bought at 50 cents or $1 still has not really made much more money than me and has had to hold on for a longer duration. I think highly volatile assets and highly speculative assets of this nature must be treated in the very same manner. The bear markets are brutal and punishing in cryptocurrencies. And as we've clearly seen, a bull run, especially for altcoins or an alt season, can last just several weeks to just a handful of months. This means you actually have a really limited time frame and window in crypto to capitalize on those gains. The remainder of the time is spent waiting for the movements to start erupting or suffering in a bear market for multi-months to years on end before the cycle resets and continues. And I think specifically in this point in time where we have been suffering with altcoins for many years being suppressed by that BTC dominance and we are on the cusp of an eruption, it's going to be really, really easy for you to become blinded in that moment of euphoria, hysteria, and excitement and overwhelming amounts of money to not take profits this time. The truth is, as long as you leave with something, and if you are able to maximize, essentially look at the entirety from complete bottom to top, your goal as a cryptocurrency investor is to capture as much of that movement as possible. Because the higher you buy, the higher you need. And the higher you buy, the more likely it is to be willing to buy at those prices. You have been blinded by some form of narrative to believe the best is yet to come. But the truth is, if you were to buy, let's say, 50% of the way prior to the end of a bull market, you've got to target significantly higher because the amounts most people are investing are also not significant sums. So with cryptocurrencies, people are looking to try and turn $1,000 into 100K. That's simply not going to be obtainable if you're buying once the move has already set off. And you need to be brave enough and take that risk to buy at the lowest possible prices you can, even when it looks like the market will never recover again. And this has always been the key to me to acquiring significant growth out of my assets. But you should also understand not to be greedy because a day will come where the market will not provide these returns anymore. The market will eventually stabilize. With the introduction of ETFs, the introduction of Wall Street, things will eventually stabilize. And eventually, I would not be surprised if the market either implodes, dot-com boom and bust all over again, because it is a bubble. No matter what people say, no matter what government is involved, cryptocurrencies are a huge bubble. A bubble that could theoretically contribute to a market-wide economical bubble implosion later down the line. I think cryptos really are no different to the dot-com boom and bust. It's an exciting new technology that's been introduced, but I think the prices and valuations of these assets and coins are heavily overstated, to be honest with you. And in fact, even where most of them currently are, I personally feel they're heavily overvalued for what they are, considering there is not as much real world adoption as you would generally want to see. So this is a real speculative hype and bubble for me. Now, the key to understand this is to simply understand the playground you are playing within. Understand you're in a bubble, because it doesn't matter if it's a bubble or not. In fact, a bubble is the best possible time to make life-changing money. But you must understand, when operating within a bubble, you need to also have a more shorter term approach to the game. Now, you do not necessarily need to perfectly time the market either, because let's just say right now, you haven't had the best approach in the world and you've bought a little bit higher than you wanted to. You've chased the pump and you've only made 200 to 500% this cycle. Now, is it worth, and this is something I say to members a lot, you want to look at that money in the moment. It won't be easy to treat it as real money in that moment. And actually, one of the most liberating feelings in the world you will experience is taking profits out of the market. Even if it's a fraction of what you generally hold or currently hold overall, the simple measurement of, and the simple satisfaction, shall I say, of pushing that sell button will completely change the scope of your investing, because it is not real until you press sell. You can't buy assets with unrealized gains. In fact, you can't do anything besides take screenshots and mesmerize yourself over the numbers. It is make believe until that shit is real. And most people do not allow it to become real, because greed consumes them to the point where what they once had is a screenshot and a dream and a vivid memory of money that was once there. Money that isn't necessarily guaranteed to return. And when you just simply have an understanding that the future is not guaranteed, you don't know what's going to happen in 5 years, and you didn't know what was going to happen 5 years ago now. You have no way of truly grasping the picture that far ahead. So I always think, why leave it down to faith when the market is in this present moment offering you opportunity of a lifetime after opportunity of a lifetime? Of course, entries are crucial, and this is something I heavily focus on for members. Even on the current short-term pumps we've seen on altcoins in the present day, in the span of 2 weeks, each coin I invested into has netted 120% ROI, simply due to the fact I bought at the correct prices, and this is what I get members into as well. Because the lower you buy, the more freedom you have to exit the market early. And this is really important to understand. You exiting in what you perceive as early will still leave you far better off than 99% of people out there in the market who do not take any profits whatsoever. And this is where the third cycle experience really comes into play. For anyone that may be in the first cycle, you want to be taking this on board, because this will theoretically change your life by allowing you to capitalize on what you probably have there right now. And I personally feel you should never be scared to take profits out of the market. Focus on yourself. Do not be blinded and distracted by what other people are screaming, what other people believe, or even what happens after. The mere simple goal of this game is to get in and get out. You have invested your money. And as much as you tell yourself you're here for the long term, a lot of people are here for the long term, not out of choice, because they have put themselves in predicaments where they are now stuck holding the bag for a very long time. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people right now, if not most people, are still not even in profits on altcoins. And why is that? This is again where the truthful side of being honest with yourself comes into play. If you have been in crypto for several years and you have nothing to show for it, that is your own fault. And you need to look at that in the present moment and go, how have I not survived multiple cycles of mind-boggling numbers? What have I done wrong to have not have attained the profit? And the simple answer is, you have fallen for the entirety of the HODL narrative. Now, many people will argue, well, yeah, BTC, if you had just held it the whole time, you would have been up. That is true. But not everything moves like BTC, and we can see the cycles already beginning to shift. So there is always a risk threshold with taking profits as well. And the key again is to simply not sell everything and leave a little bit of a runner. In cryptocurrency, something I done in the very beginning, and one of the contributing factors to why I held on so much longer, is because I done what many people would do and still do now. I would look at how much I hold of a particular coin, and don't lie and say you haven't done this, because we've all fucking done this. I would look at my portfolio and be like, all right, I've got this much XRP, this much F, this much this. And I would just start to calculate how much I would have at a really, really crazy, unrealistic number. But by doing that, you psychologically and subconsciously program yourself to not settle because you've now set on your mind that I'm going to have $10 million or $100 million or £100 million, 100 million euros if price achieves this level. And most of the time, you've probably gathered it doesn't achieve the level you want. Because the truth is, the market does not give a fuck about your hopes and dreams and desires. It doesn't care what you've read, it doesn't care what you believe, it cares about nothing besides itself. And those that move the markets and influence the markets also care about themselves. And they need you to lose and believe these narratives so they can continue succeeding. When you truly start to gauge that most people never actually take a profit out of the market, you then begin to realize that even taking the smallest fractions of profits out of the market leaves you a winner. Because at the end of the day, that's all this is. And this is a very short-term market in terms of cycles. No matter what you see, think, or believe, you cannot compare it to anything else because it's almost far too early to be comparable to any other asset class, but simultaneously too far down the line now to try and replicate the BTC Genesis holder performances. We're in a very different part of the cycle. And the truth is, if you understand you're participating within a bubble, you'll be able to play the game with the understanding that you are contributing to the overall wider bubble in the grand scheme of things. Now, again, this is another video for another topic and another day, because I can really go on for this all day long. But the key factor here is to understand what generally happens in the third cycles. Now, if you've made it to the third cycle, and I'm hoping this is relatable to most people because this is all coming from real experiences and everything else that comes with it. Now, in the third cycle, people are often faced with a very delicate balance. The first cycle, you've essentially gone into the market, you FOMO'd in, you've probably made an absolute fortune, specifically if you were there from 2017 or 2020, 2021. So depending on where you are in the cycles, I'm going through these stages to assist you with wherever you are in the cycle. And we'll break in this all down step by step. Now, for anyone that's been through the third cycle, you generally have the euphoria of the first cycle where you haven't taken enough profits. In the second cycle, you've maybe sold too early out of fear. But in the third cycle, the key is the successful people in their third cycle and potentially their fourth or fifth, depending on how long this show goes on for, have found a delicate balance between the two. And this is absolutely key. They may not necessarily make it the entire way to the other end, but they may not necessarily sell too early either. And the truth is, you don't need to time the perfect top if you are consistently scaling out every step of the way. And this is how people win in their third cycle if they learn from the mistakes of the previous cycle. So if you're currently in your first cycle, just remember the show will end and it will all come crashing down at some point. We never necessarily know exactly when that will be. And I've never been the ultimate top caller myself personally, but yet I've left every single cycle a winner, significantly better off than I was in the previous cycle. Even when I've sold early, I've ended up far better off than most people. And this is a huge misconception for so many people. They just want to be perfectly buying bottoms and perfectly buying tops. The truth is, it's significantly easier to buy the bottom than it is to sell the top. And that's the beauty of this game. I've rarely ever missed the bottom. In fact, I could show you all my entries and you've seen them in videos. Getting entries and buying the bottom is the easy part. Exiting at a Pico top is the hardest part. But you don't need to exit the lower you buy at the Pico top. Furthermore, even if you sell a fraction of the way, you're still going to be better off than most people. Greed is one hell of an emotion, specifically when paired with the market moving at a rapid pace. So if you're in your first ever cycle, I would highly advise when things get crazy, take some fucking profits. If you're in your second cycle and you've got a bit of PTSD from not selling before and round tripping, well, when things start to get crazy, take some fucking profits. Now, if you're in your third cycle and you've been a bit scarred, but you've also made a bit money and you're thinking, well, if alts go crazy this time, take some fucking profits. Now, the key to this is being realistic with yourself and not necessarily looking for anything beyond what you currently see on your charts. This means using what I call the current playground to your advantage. If you know where the current all-time high is, and the truth is, there is not even a guarantee for the coins that don't look like, let's say, Solana or Ethereum. How do you know they're going to break all-time highs again? Wouldn't it be far safer to start targeting anywhere from 50% to 80% of the overall move? Because logically, everyone would be seeking those unrealistic targets. And even when those all-time highs are broken, the truth is you will convince yourself that it's going to go higher because emotions will get the best of you. The key to understand here is if you can even leave with 100% ROI on your return on investment, you have won significantly because you're not getting that elsewhere in other markets. If you make 200 to 500% and the market still goes an extra 200% higher, who gives a fuck? If you have left the market with a significant return on investment, you have significantly won and you've beaten the odds and beaten the game. A lot of people have this issue where they look at what could have been instead of looking at what is and what they have right now. The amount of times I've taken a profit out of the market and every single cycle I've managed to obtain at least 1,000% return on investment. Prices always go higher and everyone will say you could have made more. Yeah, I know, but I also could have made nothing. Gratitude is essential, not just in life itself, but also within the markets. When you compare cryptocurrencies to traditional markets and what they generally return, you will start to appreciate what you currently have in the moment. Because I always say to people, when they say, Torre, I've got this much in XRP or F or BTC, do you think I should sell any? I haven't sold any yet. I always say, okay, here's the first thing you should do. First of all, I say yes, just take profits anyway. But one of the main things I will ask that person is, how would you feel right now if that money was gone? How would you feel right now if 50% of that to 70% of that was wiped in a heartbeat? Now, you may be wondering, why the hell is he doing this video now? This is almost a pre-preparation video for the insanity that I think will come. So I think it's very important you already have a mental preparation of where to exit. And my personal advice is that preparation of where to exit should be within the current trading boundaries already from where the current all-time high is and lower. Because more often than not, in every single cycle, the more unrealistic those expectations become, the more people start to scream for highs that are not yet visited or visible on the charts. There's a greater chance that the market will never ever attain those levels. And even if it does, it could take many, many years. But would you not say you're cutting yourself short and have been cutting yourself short every single cycle by not selling out of greed and the belief that prices will continuously go higher? At the core of it all, for me, these are investments, and the core of it all, the goal is to invest the money and get the money out. And you will probably be quite scared. It's funny because most people are capable of blindly buying at any given price, but when it comes to selling, they're very, very scared to do so because they have this marriage with their coins and this emotional attachment. But the truth is, if you simply press the sell button, you will feel that liberating sensation of reward. Do not forget to reward yourself for the efforts you have placed within the market, for holding through those horrible periods. To see the market give you something and say, no, I want more, well, the market will punish you aggressively, and it likely already has done so. So you don't just want to learn from the previous cycles, and specifically if this is your first cycle, you're going to probably learn the hard way if you don't take this advice. Quite simply, if you do not sell when your coins start going higher, specifically from a 50% point of lows to highs onwards, you will suffer. And one of the easiest solutions to this is to forget about that mythical number you've created in your head. And every stage higher of whether it's 50% or 100% ROI, depending on where you've bought, of course. If you bought around the all-time low areas where I bought, those are 100%, 200% jumps. But depending on worse prices, 10s, 50s, 100%, etc. Essentially, if you trim off a small amount every step of the way, you're never going to perfectly capture from bottom to top, but what you will do is you will eventually have scaled out to a point where you have scaled out the entirety of the move all the way up to the all-time high. And even if you don't sell everything, when the market crashes, it always bounces back up at some point. When the trend begins to shift and we go from bull market to bear market, there are always bounces all the way down. And all you need to do is sell on the pumps, which become your exit plan. So even if you don't capture the Pico top, when the market reverses, those bounces become your exit opportunity, not your buying opportunity. It's a really cruel game, this market, unfortunately. And the key to always remember is these opportunities may not be there forever. And I think when you understand the reality of the market you are trading within and what truly drives the wheels of this market, alongside The simple key factor of looking at what you have already. If you're new to the markets and you see these returns, the easiest way to do this is compare with how much you make in the real world. I guarantee you at that point, when you realize the profits you have here will take you weeks, months, or years, if ever, to ever earn that money, you will press the sell button at least in a certain fraction. If you've been in this game for a long time and you do not have a remarkable amount of profits, you have done something horribly wrong. That's the brutal truth. How can you participate in a market that offers you thousands of percent on average every single cycle and have nothing to show? And this is again where you have to put the ego aside and be very honest with yourself. I guarantee you, as long as you don't sell it all like some maniac at a random price point, if you at least trim something out of the market, how can you ever complain when you've won? The money you've invested has led to more money which you've taken out. The key of this game is to make money, and none of that is real until you press the sell button. So don't be afraid to look back and reflect. Look at where you've bought, look at where you've gone wrong, look at why you haven't made any money if you've been here for several years. What is it you've done wrong? The formula and answers to all of your problems are found directly within your portfolio. Most platforms now, I use Kraken and Kraken Pro, there are dots and arrows which show every single buy or sell. So I am able to reflect on exactly what I've done correctly and exactly what I've done incorrectly by simply looking at my buy and sells. The answers are all there in our actions, and we're fortunate enough that most platforms now illustrate in real time exactly where you've bought and sold. So don't be afraid to reflect. But more importantly, I think wild times are ahead. And the key message behind this video really is to learn from your mistakes. And if you have not yet made those mistakes, you will likely make those mistakes if you don't push the sell button. Your goal is to leave this market a winner. And you are never truly a winner if those gains remain in unrealized form. And before you know it, the market will turn those into unrealized losses. And that is unfortunately where most people begin to realize the loss. Always look at what you have in that moment. When things truly start to get crazy, look at that money and go, how would I feel if this was taken away from me right now? Stop looking at the make believe, or stop looking at the what ifs of everyone goes, what if it goes higher? What if it goes higher? But what if it goes lower? What will you do then? We never think about it in that moment because the speed these things go upwards and the size of your gains and the rapid growth of your portfolio blinds you in that present moment to not perceiving the dangers that actually follow from those moments. So quite simply, don't forget and don't be afraid to press the sell button.